My name is Wes Hagen, and this is my beautiful wife, Chanda. And we are hanging out in quarantine. And welcome to day drinking on Memorial Day of 2020. So it's been a heck of a few weeks, a heck of a few months. And this is the second time I've had Chanda on. I noticed that the first time I did it, our hits went way up, no surprise. So I appreciate you lending your beauty and your perspective to our wonderful show. So we are here Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 5 o'clock to around 6 o'clock, although I am finding I'm learning as I begin to progress in my skills as a sort of a talk show host that I'm actually making the shows a little bit shorter. Tonight, I have a couple very, very exciting things to share with everybody, and that is number one, my direct-to-consumer manager, Jerry, just gave me the okay to reinstitute the 50% off sale for Ballard Lane, Smashberry, and a Barrel Burner. So that means all of those wines, so many of them a 90, 92-point score wines.
Tim Vandergrift is watching.
No way, Tim! Yeah! Well, finally had time where Tim wasn't off, working on his brown liquor skills and/or finding the most delicious beers in British Columbia. So I hope everything is well up at White Rock and that we have some fun talking about it. You're going to like the conversation today. And my friend Tim Vandergrift still has the world record. I watched him drink 4.5 liters of Pliny the Elder in less than 2 hours. And said, it's so delicious. I think I remember Tim saying, man, we were in a hotel in Santa Rosa. And after, I think he had just about finished the 9th one because I told him I didn't think he could drink a 12-pack. He's like, oh, I did 12 pints in Denver. I can do 12 pints, So he was drinking 500s, and I think the 9th was about gone. He's like, I'm not even full. I'm not really even done. But if there was a heaven, I would expect it to feel just like this. I'm just going to chill for a little bit. He is a power lifter that wears a kilt, I should say. I'm Scottish enough. And one of my best friends, Jason Gilbreth, is the 11th or 12th descendant of Robert the Bruce. So yeah, I should be careful, calling kilts skirts. So again, as I was saying, welcome Tim. Yeah, buddy, and welcome Nick. Nick Profaci, you should know Tim Vandergrift. Tim Vandergrift probably knows more about kit winemaking than anyone in North America. I hate to say that because he knows so much more about beer and wine and spirits and mezcal and God, you taught you anything. Tim Vandergrift is one of my favorite brains on the planet Earth. So you're freaky deaky Dutch, dude. We know it is a skirt. That's absolutely accurate. So glad to have everyone as they start coming in, and Tommy and Joe's here, and Dawn and everybody else. We'll be turning on Instagram at 5 o'clock because we don't want those Instagram people to know what we do beforehand because they're all just so young. I was told to increase the youth cohort in my show, so I added Instagram on a whole other thing. I'm surrounded by cameras. So loads of fun, having fun. So the two things I really wanted to talk about tonight, the things on the schedule are we're going to talk about aging white wine. So does white wine age like red wine? Is it a different chemical process? How long can you expect a regular white wine that you buy out of the supermarket or in your wine club to last? Why age white wine? What is it about aging white wine, and what flavors and secondary and tertiary characteristics does aging a white wine give? And does that appeal to you? You're looking at two people that it appeals to greatly. My wife loves older white wine that is lacking of any type of baby fat or freshness.
I actually prefer red wine, but I also do like older white wine.
Is there a reason why you like older white wine as opposed to younger white wine?
I don't like anything fruity or flowery. I like it earthy, minerally, complex, interesting.
My first point on aging white wine would be that, first of all, white wine doesn't need to be aged as much as red. That red requires a little more patience. We had one of the best shows we've ever had, I think, a week ago today, which was in defense of white wine. And I got so many amazing comments that thank goodness that someone finally stood up for white wine, that you don't get a lot of critics, you don't get a lot of people talking about how white wine might actually be as good or better than red. You know, the Harry Waugh thing, the first responsibility of any great wine is to be red, its second responsibility is to be Burgundy. I get it, Burgundy's incredible, but I've had Rieslings and Montrachets and Chenin Blancs and sparkling wines, you know, which I consider white even if they come from a red grape, either a Blanc de Noir or Blanc de Blanc. It's incredible that way. So we'll talk a little bit more about aging white wine, but I also wanted to give you guys the really good news that we have reinstituted the sale at MillerFamilyWines.com. So using the promo code capital D 50, day drinking 50, gives you 50% off at least 6 bottles. You got to buy 6 bottles, but that's no problem because when you hear that they're down to $7.50 a bottle and $3.75 for a 375 milliliter can, that is a great deal. That is an absolutely great deal. We're talking the Smashberry Rosé, which just got 90 points in the Spectator and 90 points in the tasting panel. $7.50 for a Grenache Rosé that'll absolutely blow doors. Delicious. I really like the Ballard Lane setup. You got the Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay. You also have Pinot Noir, Zinfandel, and Cabernet, and then the barrel burner wines, kind of Napa style at lower than Paso prices. Both 92-point score wines from the 2017 vintage, Chardonnay, and a beautiful Cabernet Sauvignon with a good deal of oak. So if you love wine and you need 6 bottles, a case, a couple cases, I know a lot of you are stocking up. That's fantastic. You're going to get really, really a great deal. So check out MillerFamilyWines.com and show my boss that I'm actually working today, even though I don't have to be. So my work ethic today was my wife. She said, I thought you promised. I'm like kind of thinking, you know, maybe we just barbecue and hang out and I'll give Monday off. These people are probably tired of hearing. They're like, no, your people count on you. They may have actually planned to watch you tonight. So we are going to.
Don't break your promises.
No. There's nothing better than a wife to keep you up on your promises. Plus, I sort of hurt my unidentified disc golfing bruise. I had not played disc golf. Which is basically throwing frisbees at chain baskets. It's kind of like golf, but not completely like golf. But I have not played disc golf in 10 weeks. Went out yesterday, did social distancing with a friend, tried to stay 20 feet away. You know, he had his beer, I had my beer. He had his discs, I had my discs. At one point, I completely blew it and threw a frisbee back to him from about 20 feet and was basically... Yeah, I got in trouble and I went and washed my hands. So far, so good.
You're only 3.5 times more likely to die if you get it. Don't worry about that, though.
I heard 7 to 10 times.
For a type 1 diabetic?
Yeah,
or just for a diabetic?
I heard somewhere between...
Type 2 is 2 times more likely to die, and type 1 is 3.5 more times more likely to die if you get it.
Well, okay.
That's difference than... Getting it as opposed to, I'm just talking about death. I prefer you not to die.
I've heard it goes up to almost 7. It can go to 7 to 10% mortality rate.
Scare the crap out of me.
Yeah, that'll scare the crap out of me. I won't throw any frisbees back. But this had nothing to do with frisbee. And in fact, going back through my mind what I did between the beers, I did 2 things that could have resulted in my sprained pinky. And it's kind of gray and gross, and I don't think it's broken, but it's kind of screwed up. So I guess I'm off the course for a little while because I throw left-handed. But I putt right-handed, so I'll be practicing that. But I climbed a tree about 25 feet up to retrieve a friend's disc, and it was a fairly intensely dense tree. I didn't fall. I didn't say ouch. I didn't like jump off or do anything, so I'm not sure. And then I was going through, as most golfers do, every hole. Before you leave the hole, you go through your bag and make sure you didn't leave a club on the last hole. I realized that I had left a disc somewhere in the last few holes, figured out where I had done it, did something stupid like threw a second shot to try to ride it against a wall, and it ended up, what I thought, in all these leaves. So I went and completely moved about 2 million leaves looking for my disc until I figured that I actually threw it farther than I thought, went 50 feet past the leaves, found my disc, and was so excited. As I was going up a grass hill and going back down, I lost my footing and I fell. So my guess is I didn't do it climbing a tree, although I think it's a better story. My guess is I just basically...
Tripped on grass.
I tripped on grass. Sort of, you know, I make some comment about, you know, being in college and tripping in grass, but, you know, that's just, you know. That was so last month. Now we're just giving you guys pure and beautiful wine content. So let's talk a little bit, and the last thing that I promised some folks today that they seem really interested in is talk a little bit, and maybe we'll start here, is to talk a little bit about Memorial Day and a little bit about the U.S. military and the influence of the U.S. military on beverages through the world. And the two sort of examples that I wanted to give is oak treatment of French wines and Coca-Cola. And the first one is from Tom Standage in his book, History of the World in Six Glasses. And he explains how basically the U.S. military set up Coca-Cola's expansion throughout the entire world. And that every time the U.S. military moves to a new place in the world, they help set up, and they bring in. And one thing about Coca-Cola, which I never even knew, Coca-Cola has never, ever sold a Coca-Cola. The Coca-Cola Corporation in Atlanta, Georgia, and Pemberton, the gentleman who discovered the original formula for cocaine-infused Coca-Cola, sort of an energy drink, which eventually just became a soda, basically the idea of replacing cocaine with caffeine. Two things you might not know about Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is still one of the only companies in the United States that has a license for actually producing alkaloids from coca. The Coca-Cola Corporation produces a hell of a lot of medical cocaine every year, very carefully watched, and gives it for eye surgery and dental surgery, the few people that probably still need it or whatever.
Eye surgery or something?
Yeah. I don't know what actual... I can honestly say I haven't seen cocaine in like 30 years, which is probably really, really good for me. But the idea is that Coca-Cola still contains cola alkaloids for flavor. They have proven to the United States. Coca alkaloids, not cocaine though. And B, they never sold cocaine or Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola has always been sold as syrup. Syrup is, and you'll always notice that wherever you get your Coca-Cola, your local bottling plant is not owned by the Coca-Cola Corporation. It is basically franchised from the Coca-Cola Corporation, and Atlanta sells them their syrup. You take the syrup, you can either take the syrup, can it, bottle it, or put it, into a fountain. And there you go, Coca-Cola. And so, one thing that we can be excited of as you drink a Coca-Cola, if you are like my wife and enjoy having one every once in a while, that the reason why Coca-Cola is a global phenomenon is also due to the incredible efficiency of the U.S. military. So thank you, veterans, for all the delicious cola and all the delicious freedoms we have around the world. Both of my grandfathers were both World War II veterans. My grandfather on my mom's side was a Navy captain as well as a Navy chaplain. So he was a chaplain in the Pacific Theater in the Navy, and my grandfather, and that was Hugh David Burcham, of course, and my grandfather on my dad's side, Benjamin Oliver Hagen. Did you know my grandfather's middle name was Oliver? Oh, yeah. Oliver was one of our best dogs. So he was in the Pacific Theater as well, in the Navy as well. So first of all, I want to throw out the idea that I miss both of them. Quick memory. I would love for you guys to think of anyone who was in your family who was in the military, who either gave their life for America, for freedom, for whatever we've been doing. Take a moment to really reflect. One thing I remember about my grandfather on my mom's side, Hugh David Burcham, not only was he one of the most stern, serious, and gentle people all at once. He was a Presbyterian minister, and he could put a gaze on you that would basically go right through you like laser beams. But in the end, he was, even though I'm not specifically a religious person, I always remember him. He will always be my model of the proper use of Christianity in the world, of kindness, of inclusiveness, of gentility, of intellectuality, of being an intellectual. I mean, he knew Greek and Roman mythology. He knew so much. So when I went to college and started getting kind of a B in my bonnet.
It's 5 o'clock, by the way.
Oh, right on. With agnosticism, basically he was willing to argue with it without telling me that, well, specifically that I was going to hell. All right, let's bring on these Instagram folks now that we've got all this God stuff out of the way. All right. Cool. So welcome Instagram to Day Drinking with Wes Hagen. It is 5 o'clock, which means we need to get into something. I want to start day drinking. What the hell?
It's still daylight.
It is still daylight. It was supposed to be 86 degrees here in the nice, cool,
But it's not.
the cool, windy area of Santa Maria. It didn't even hit 80. which was absolutely wonderful. I love 79. 86 is just it's a little too Texas in winter for me. So I kind of prefer that sort of 71 through 79 is sort of my super comfort level. And yes, in Santa Maria, California, our high temperatures are between 65 and 85 degrees 350 days out of the year. So yes, I am a total snowflake and I melt incredibly easy. My mom doesn't do very well outside of certain temperature ranges, and I don't either. All right, so what are we day drinking today? And I always love to know where you are, what you're drinking, what you're doing. Are you having fun? I'm hoping you're not at the beach, jowl to jowl, laughing and screaming at each other. Obviously, when we are with each other and we're wearing our masks and we're being careful, one thing you don't want to do is be around angry people without a mask. People maybe that are screaming.
Spraying their spit everywhere.
Yes. Who knew that my wife, being a little bit of a germaphobe, had been training all of her life
for this very moment.
For this very moment. Oh, by the way, Instagram, meet my wife Chanda. She's awesome. We've been married 20 years. We just passed our 21st anniversary of our first date. Okay. And we were married on the 150th anniversary of the statehood of California. So I'm not going to tell you our anniversary. You got to look it up. 150th anniversary, the sesquicentennial. I would not know how to say it or spell it if I hadn't have mistakenly been, I don't even want to, married on the 150th anniversary of California statehood. I think that's pretty damn cool, actually. All right, so love to know what you guys are drinking, and I'll show you what I'm drinking. Smashberry. This is a wine that doesn't exist anymore, but we're bringing it back. Smashberry is really taking off right now. The two wines we're making right now in the Smashberry world, and one of them I already drank, so I can't even show you, is the Smashberry Red Blend, which is Cab Sauv, Syrah, Merlot, and Cab Franc. Beautiful, cool label. And the Rosé, which you can still right now get at the Miller Family MillerFamilyWines.com. And if you use the promo code DD50, Day Drinking 50% off. DD50 gets you 50% off all of the non-J. Wilkes wines right now with $10 shipping per case, flat rate. And it doesn't work with J. Wilkes wines, but if you buy 6 bottles of J. Wilkes, you get 20% off. If you buy a case of J. Wilkes, you get 25% off. So everything right now, we've extended our sale to Miller Family Wine Company. One reason is because you guys have been so incredibly supportive. And I know I'm getting a little strictly commercial. So let's get back to white wine. So what we're talking about tonight is the U.S. military and how they influenced wine after World War II. I'm going to tell you a couple stories about that. Don't worry, they won't be boring stories that you would expect to hear from Grandpa Simpson. I'm going to be telling you some stuff about wine that is really going to influence the way that you look at wine and understand how wine has changed as a result of the end of World War II. Then we're going to be talking a little bit about white wine and aging. And our show last Monday was one of my favorites ever, In Defense of White Wine. We spent about 40 minutes talking about how cool white wine is. And to break that down a little bit, I would say that my point really is that white wine is more expressive as it's young, in a culture where we drink 90% of the wines within 48 hours of purchase. White wine is more transparent to the place where it's grown and the way that it was handled. Red wine has a lot of baby fat and extract that keeps us away from the true nature of the wine until it gets a little bit of age. So I think white wine is a better value. I think it's better quality to price ratio. I made the statement that no one seemed to take any umbrage with, is that think about the last time that a bottle of white wine that you bought that was over $30 disappointed you. And then think about how many times just in the last month or so how many $30+ bottles of red wine were disappointing. I am constantly disappointed by bottles of red wine that are expensive. I am almost never disappointed with white wine that's expensive, because generally, if you can get away with selling expensive red wine, I think there are a lot of people that drink red wine that don't understand it. I think people who buy expensive white wine have better palates. I think they're more advanced in their understanding of wine, and I think they understand also that there's better value there. So white wine's kind of like the secret place where some of the cool kids hanging out. And I think that's really where a lot of the quality to price ratio is happening. So that was, in a nutshell, that's what I said. I thought white wine, it needs to be defended because I think it's an incredible value. And some of my favorite white wines, probably 3 of the top 5 wines I've ever had, have probably been white wines. And there we go. So this,
You're
I know.
shaking the whole thing.
So this wine is 2014. It is predominantly Roussanne. It's a white grape from the Rhone Valley. And it also has, gosh, it has so many different grapes in it. It has a tiny bit of Chardonnay. It has some white Riesling. It has some Marsanne. It has some Viognier. It might even have some Grenache Blanc in it. So it's generally a white Rhone blend with a little bit of white Riesling, about 20% white Riesling added. It is not dry either. I thought maybe one reason this wine didn't catch on is it wasn't marketed as a wine for spicy food, because that's really what I love about it. It's about, I want to remember it was about 0.5% residual, which would be about 5 or 6 grams per liter, which is noticeable for most palates. You've heard me say it so many times, you can probably repeat it with me. Most men can pick up residual sugar at about 4 grams per liter, 0.4% residual sugar by volume, and most women can pick up residual sugar at about 3 grams per liter of residual sugar, because women tend to have better olfactory senses than men, larger olfactory lobes and higher taste bud density as a result of evolution. Why do women smell better, both literally and figuratively? We know this, right? So men would go out, we'd kill some shit, we would chop it up, throw it on, bloody mess on the floor of the cave, and chances are the women would come and actually look at that stuff and smell it to determine if that food, if that meat was safe to put in the fire and fix and serve to the tribe. So I like to say, if the muscularity of the man failed, if the bravery of the men, if the protection of the men, if the warfare of the men failed, the tribe was done. So there's a very strong evolutionary pressure for men to be violent and good fighters and good at throwing spears and carrying dead pieces of meat, and women nurturing, collecting, fermenting, preparing, fire building, and all the sensory evaluation that is required for those skills. So I would say that I'm very, very pleased to know that I have someone with a Y chromosome, 2 X chromosomes. I didn't flip you off. Anyway. I've got the Y chromosome. You have 2 X chromosomes, so I know that I've got an expert in the house. Plus, she's like a super palate, and she can smell stuff in the house like 3 blocks away. So how lucky we are for that perspective. So what white wines age? What white wines don't age? I would say probably Chardonnay, of white Burgundies, and wines that are $300-400 up to a couple $1,000. I'm thinking about Montrachet, I'm thinking about Chevalier Montrachet, I'm thinking about Bertin Montrachet, Le Montrachet. I'm thinking about the great white vineyards, Grenouille from Chablis, the forests in Chablis, all the great Grand Crus. So if a wine is from France and it's from Burgundy, Chablis, or from Champagne, and it's white, it's going to be Chardonnay. Blanc de Blanc or white Burgundy or Chablis is 100% Chardonnay. And then you notice that it either has a Premier Cru or a Grand Cru designation. Well, Premier Cru Chardonnay should go 10 to 15 years without even having an issue, as long as it's a modern vintage. It's not from the time where they were having problems with premature oxidation, known as Premox. And then, so a Premier Cru Chardonnay, you're going to pay $50 to $100 for it probably. Grand Cru Chardonnay, Champagne or Chablis, you could pay $150 for it. Or white Burgundy, you can pay $5,000 a bottle for that stuff. Now, I don't suggest you pay $5,000 for a bottle of Grand Cru Chardonnay and open it up that night. What you're paying for is sort of like the promise of the experience within an hour of drinking that wine that's worth like a 72-inch plasma television. I mean, if you're paying $5,000 to drink a bottle of wine, it's got to be 20 years from now, because 20 years from now, that wine's going to open up. You just can't take an 8-week-old puppy and expect it to like kick ass at Crufts, right? It's got to be, you got to let it mature. You got to let it develop its mature face. So you got to let a little bit of that sort of baby fat fall off. The richness of Montrachet, the richness of the Côte de Beaune whites, and Champagne as well. Champagne, for example, we did a Blanc de Blanc Gimonnet that was a late disgorged wine that was like 10 years old, and it was so fresh. We wished it kind of was like the best Prosecco we'd ever had, because it had no depth. It had very little character. 20th anniversary. No, 15. I think it was 15. I thought we were here. Were we here for our 15th? Yeah. It would have been our first anniversary here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bought a great bottle of wine up in Arroyo Grande, and I brought it back. It was just so fresh. I was disappointed that it didn't show any of that maturity. So how about United States? We were just walking through a liquor store, walking through a supermarket, walking through a state store. You just see labels, white wine. What can you imagine? Well, if I'm just pulling off, let's go to what people are buying right now. The number one price, the average price for a bottle of wine being sold during COVID is $17, down from $21 pre. So let's just say you're pulling $16.99 bottles off the shelf, right? So I'm pulling Chenin Blanc. Okay, 5 years from California, maybe a little bit longer from South Africa, or about the same. So I would say in general, any white wine you would find just off the shelf, I would say if you want some maturity in the wine, 5 to 7 years. California, 5 to 7 years. Even inexpensive wines, I think 5 to 7 years can give you a lot more value. In fact, if you like older wines, you can probably triple or quadruple the value of the wines that you buy and drink as a result of just buying them early, laying them down, and then taking them out as they have a little bit of age. Requires something quite un-American, which is patience. But, let's memorialize all of these amazing people in our military that have kept the United States viable, healthy, and vibrant for so long, and let's celebrate them by doing something like laying down our wine and having something delicious, especially American wine. Sounds great. So let's even get a little bit more than that. So if we go $17, I'm suggesting 5 years from vintage date, not from when you buy it. So if you buy a 2012, well, it's probably already ready to go. So right now I'm saying 13s and 14s are ready to go. 15s are drink or hold. 16s are drink or hold. 17s probably, I would say drink or hold for everything, because as soon as I start saying hold, you're going to stop drinking the wine. So have fun with it. Drink it up. It's going to be great. Why? Why should I do this? Why should I take part of my house, cool it down to 55 to 65 degrees at 75 to 85% humidity, and deal with that amazing difficulty for 5 years just to drink a great bottle of wine? Well, first of all, if you like bright, fresh, young wine, if you just love a Sauvignon Blanc full of grapefruit and gooseberry and that's your thing, you never have to listen to another damn word I say. Drink what you love what you drink. Don't listen to me. I'm just a single palate who knows a little bit about wine. If you really enjoy drinking the wines fresh, there's great opportunities for you. There's not only bag and box, there's cans, there's keg wine. We're going to be talking about keg wine in a couple of shows. So that's really, really important, is to understand, first of all, just because the geeks do it, just because Robert Parker did it, or I don't know if he even ages wines, I'm sure he does, he's got probably a hell of a cellar, but you don't have to buy a $500 wine to get the benefit of aging that wine. In fact, some of the best quality to price ratio wines I've ever had have been Cru Beaujolais, and I've bought 1995 Cru Beaujolais and laid it down to 2005, 10 years on a Morgon, 10 years on a Fleury. And those wines are absolutely spectacular. They taste like $100 wines that I got at Costco for $14.99. So sometimes taking a $15 wine and laying it down for a little while can get you to a $100 wine. And that's really kind of the game we play in wine. But again, you have to know your own palate. What if you don't know if you like old wine? What if you don't know? Well, look, as things start opening up, there's lots of opportunities in most major cities and most even minor cities of going to taste wines that have some age on them. Go to a Spanish wine tasting or a Portuguese wine tasting. Go to an Italian or a French wine tasting, or there's only one reason left to be a brick and mortar wine, liquor, and beer store, and that is to help people like us find what we don't know. So if you walk into a brick and mortar liquor store and you're like, hey, I want to taste old wine. I don't know if I like old white or old red or even old rosé. And they can't give you any options. That's what wine.com's for. I hate to say it, but delivery wine services are going to take over the world unless brick and mortar stores start hiring better people. There's going to be a lot of somms that are out of, probably unless fine dining comes back roaring. Hire some somms. Put some somms on the floor of these brick and mortar stores. And pay them, because they deserve it. These are incredible professional people. What I love about aged white wine is a little different than my wife. She doesn't really like the super fruity, super floral stuff. I don't mind I like persistent fruit in wine. In fact, I like to drink a wine as the persistent fruit is just beginning to sublimate and allowing the more delicate aromas and the oxidative characters to begin showing without becoming sherrified. So once a wine smells like sherry, I'm done. If a wine has a soupçon, a little hint of sherry, perfect, love it. Because it smells like nuttiness, it smells like hazelnuts, it smells like autolysis, it smells like crust, it smells like brioche. It smells like all of these wonderful things kind of coming up out of a nice old wine. And I think that really shows me an amazing amount of beauty. So this wine is 5 years. What do you think about the level of residual on this? Do you get a little sweetness?
Tiny.
Definitely some hazelnut coming out of kind of that kind of waxy honey. Really, really a beautiful wine. I think I got like 5 bottles left, which is beautiful. I'll drink one every 6 months, and when I do, I'll break it out and share it with you guys as well. Cool. So if you guys have any questions about white wine, let's take just a little moment to make sure we see everyone who has come in. And oh yes, and Tommy's got margaritas on the beach again with 2 Jennifers. Dude, you are Santa Barbara with 2 Jennifers and 2 Jennifers with 1 Tommy. Both Jennifers are very lucky to have Tommy. And Tommy, you are very lucky to be hanging out with 2 beautiful Jennifers down in beautiful Santa Barbara. And Don Ward's down there in Scottsdale, Arizona. Love that place. Yes, Tommy, the wine did travel safely. Thank you so much for taking such good care of us. And if you don't know, our tasting room has been open through this whole thing, delivering wine in masks and gloves to anyone who needs some wine outside of the tasting room. So we're not open to come in and taste, but if you want to go buy some wine or pick up even your great deals from the interwebs, you can go down to downtown Santa Barbara and enjoy that.
Food and wine.
Yes, food at the tasting room. We got cheese plates, we got charcuterie, and if you need something a little bit more, they're doing nice takeout at Finney's. And we were just down there this week in masks, and Finney's fed us. We had a lovely
we ate on the beach.
We had a lovely picnic on the grass near the beach because we didn't want to make anyone to think that we were trying to take the beach over.
Well, wheels don't go on the beach. So.
Yes, that's true. It's hard to get a wheelchair onto a beach. That's so true. Yes, and Phil's in the house, and Michelle Shin's in the house, and Chris Kramer. Thank you so much. Yeah, you know, I do. I love that nutty characteristic that comes out. I always get hazelnuts for some reason. I think it's because 80% of the white wine I drink is Chardonnay, but even in this wine, which is predominantly Roussanne, big hazelnutty characters, which is gorgeous because it matches with the honey and a little bit of the waxy character of those white Rhone varieties. And then you get the floral as it's beginning to sort of kind of lose a little bit of that sort of white Riesling youth. All those grapes together are just telling a fantastic story. And there's no oak whatsoever in this wine. So everything that's there is showing through itself, not through oak. Judy Rodriguez. Oh, I think I actually used a 4-letter explicative. She's my HR director. Darn it. It's okay. I'm not supposed to be working. Actually, Judy, does this mean I should take tomorrow off? Just saying, I am taking tomorrow off because I'm not doing the show, but I'll be working hard, I promise. And oh yes, and Michelle Shin says hi, Chanda. Awesome. Oh, what happened to my finger? I fell running on a disc golf course, and I think it's sprained. It's pretty ugly though. It's a little bent and kind of gray.
This is swollen.
Thank you. Yeah, it's swollen, and I've got a very good nurse, very very good nurse. So that's awesome. And she's getting, Michelle Shin's getting her 17 cab on with a grilled ribeye. Oh, okay, corn on the cob. Now I need some. By the way, Michelle, if you didn't come on early, I know that you guys have been so amazingly supportive. We did extend 50% off Ballard Lane, Barrel Burner, and Smashberry until June 1st. DD50 is still in the house. I slammed my fist and some people listened. So congratulations. I was worried that maybe people were just here for the discount. Turns out they were here no matter what. So I figured I'll just give the discount back to you. So thank you. Appreciate that. And Mark Reek, so nice to have you here, my friend. Oh, and Phil got to meet Oliver. We were talking about Oliver because that's the middle name of my paternal grandfather. Yes. And Ruth Ann thank you to your grandfather, your dad, your stepfather, your brother, and your husband are all military. Do you guys know where the modern military salute came from? This is a really cool story. The modern military salute came.
Not it exactly.
Well,
I would
Okay.
not. No, don't do that.
I'm saluting all the military in the world. Trust me, even though I got.
If you do, you got to do it properly.
Okay, but I guess I was doing that because I wanted to show what would normally have happened if in the Middle Ages, in the age of chivalry, if you were a knight and you were riding off to war, you would ride off. First thing you would do is you would ride off in your armor on your horse with your barding and your armor into war in front of your king or your liege. And the last thing you would do is you would lift your helmet to show the king that you are who you said you are. So when you go off riding with the colors of your king has recognized that you are who you said you are. You're not a spy. You're not an enemy dressed up in your regalia. So the idea was lift your mask, show your face to your superior, and then you close your mask and you ride off to war. So if you didn't know that, I'm full of it, honey. I'm full of these little things that no one else would have known. I promised I would give a little bit of military information about how the U.S. Military and how the end of World War II fundamentally changed the world. And the first story would go to Louis Latour, and this comes from the Cladstrup's, Dan and Ely Cladstrup's book, Wine and War. And I'm almost sure, I didn't do the notes on this because I said without notes, without a spit bucket, without a teleprompter. So I'm pretty sure it was Louis Latour or someone in the Latour or the Jadot family who was friends with the Vichy mayor of Paris. So the first thing that wine did is it saved Paris from Hitler. Why? Because just before a visit from a famous French winemaking family, who I think was Latour, if not Jadot, who was a friend of the German who he knew previously, because a lot of the Vichy occupation in France was set up by the Nazi occupation with people that were somewhat friendly with the French. So whether it was Marshal Pétain, there was some connection there. So Hitler called the mayor of Paris at the end of World War II and said, burn it to the ground. Burn it. Paris will be a smoldering heap of rubbish. Very shortly after that order was given, this French winemaker showed up to visit the mayor of Paris. And the story within Wine and War goes that this winemaker convinced the mayor of Paris to discount Hitler's needs, basically tell Hitler to pound sand and basically allow Paris to exist today. We used to actually, my wife and I, for our honeymoon, we actually stayed at the Hotel Kléber, which was the Vichy occupation's capital of Paris. And that was probably where that meeting actually took place. It could have actually happened in the room we stayed for our honeymoon. And the Avenue Kléber and the Hotel Raphael. The Hotel Raphael on Avenue Kléber. So that was one thing that really kind of happened. So a French winemaker saved Paris by convincing or having a conversation with the mayor of Paris to determine that Paris should be saved. If you haven't read the Cladstrup's Wine and War, it's absolutely fantastic. Really, really good stuff. And a lot of fantastic stuff about the French resistance, like hiding in wine barrels and crazy stuff they did to the Vichy occupation. It's great stuff. Second thing I want to talk about is oak. And oak was fundamentally changed by the end of World War II. A lot of people don't know, unless you happen to know a really great old French winemaker who was either alive pre-World War II or was making wine before World War II or had parents or grandparents that were making wine before World War II. They will tell you that it was incredibly rare in France to use French oak before the end of World War II. Almost all the great barrels were actually imported through Eastern Europe, either as staves or as barrels. So almost all wood that was used in all great French wine previous to the end of World War II was made using Hungarian and Eastern European oak. So that became the de rigueur flavor. That was the flavor that the French recognized as being part and parcel of the French wine experience. Now, at the end of World War II, boom, the Iron Curtain falls. And as a result of the Iron Curtain falling, the French lost access to Eastern European oak and began to use oak from the same tree, which is Quercus robur, R-O-B-U-R. The Quercus robur tree is the same in Russia. It's the same it's the same species that grows in France, it's the same species that grows in Hungary, same species that grows in Austria, everywhere. You know, those oak are basically the same oak, but turns out they've got terroir too. So as we changed over from the Hungarian and Eastern European oak after the fall of the Iron Curtain to using French forests such as Limousin. If you wondered why is a limousine a fancy car, it's actually named after a forest that makes the best wood for making Bordeaux wine. Or the great forests that make Burgundy barrels, such as Tronchet, Allier, Bertrange. These are the best barrels in the world. But why do we love them now when originally the French thought the Hungarian oak was superior to their own? If they thought their wood was better, of course they would have saved the trouble and the expense of importing it all the way from Hungary. So here's the deal. They began to make wine after World War II, generally in the 46, and then the great 47 vintage. The 47 vintage is probably what made French oak take over the world as far as what was considered the best oak in the world. Why? Is because in the 46 and 47 vintages, when they were starting to use French oak, 47, they were able to toast the oak and air dry it a little bit longer in preparation. And one reason I think 47 is still considered one of the greatest vintages in the history of France is because they had had the opportunity to make the barrels properly. So French oak came in only in about 1946 in France. Why does that matter? Well, there were some people in France in 46 and 47 that mattered, and they were American GIs. And as the Americans began coming home from Europe, slowly, and then a little bit faster, they came back with a taste preference for French wine. So again, you know, the Beatles sang, maybe you could argue with an American accent to appeal to an American audience. And the French began to say, well, if the Americans love French oak, maybe we'll just be patriotic and just keep throwing some more French oak on this stuff. So there's another way that the end of World War II significantly impacted French wine. Let's see, what else did I want to share? Again, without notes, no teleprompter, and without a spit bucket, I'd say that maybe the answer is somewhere in this bottle of wine. So we have, obviously, a situation where in the world we have the golden age of wine, and fortunately for us that winemaking and viticulture are perfectly attuned. I mean, if you read Wine and War, you'll realize there were people who were actually farming wine grapes in Champagne while their vineyards were being shelled. Guy lost his arm, famous Champagne viticulturist. He made like a 43 vintage. He got away with it. It was awful. He had no sulfur. He had no yeast. I mean, it was very, very difficult to make wine. But there were people during that war, and you can read in Wine and War, just how incredibly dedicated people have been in and out of war to actually produce delicious wine. So fortunately, though, in an emergency such as we find ourselves in today, even if social distancing exists for another 5 years, 10 years, for the rest of our lives, you can still make wine. Viticulture is very amenable. I always actually make my pickers spread out 6 feet because pickers love to like sit right next to each other and talk. And then they're constantly like jumping each other. They leapfrog and they lose efficiency. And I'm sorry, I just like my pickers to get the work done and let's go make some wine. Including myself. I hold myself to the same picking needs. So as far as social distancing, viticulture, perfect. You never be wanting to be working
next to anyone.
No, and if you are, you don't need to be. I mean, sometimes you put another person across the canopy, so you're pulling leaves on both sides of the canopy.
You don't have to.
I don't like to. I like to actually do one side and then move the crew to the other side to make sure that both sides are equal. Winemaking, you never want to make wine alone. Equipment can grab your arm and you can lose a limb. You can lose a thumb. I've known people who have done both. You can have your hair caught in a piece of equipment and have part of your face ripped off. You can fall in the grass and sprain your pinky. So fortunately for all of us, winemaking in California has been determined an essential business, and we take that seriously. We're going to make a lot of wine this year, and I'm hoping that you are committed to drinking a bunch of wine because one without the other isn't going to work. So we thoroughly appreciate that. If you have any questions about what else about, do I have anything else about military and wine? I want to just make sure everyone knows just how much I miss my grandparents and how much I miss my grandpas, and to say that, you know, I did mention my mother's dad, who was the Presbyterian minister who had the very intense stare, and married us. Kindly, we actually, as humanists ourselves, we are not religious, but our Presbyterian grandfather had never done a non-religious service. So there was
also married everyone in the family.
So we couldn't skip out on that. But we didn't want to. We wanted him part of the service there at the vineyard where we used to live. So we basically got into negotiations of how many times he could use the word Jesus or God. We asked for no more than one God, two Jesuses, and he could also throw in at least one mention of a biblical story that included a vineyard. How many did we end up with? I think we got 4 Jesuses, 3 gods, and 2 vineyard stories.
But didn't really keep track.
It was a 12-minute service as opposed to the
just got him in there.
The 42-minute service he's regularly done. I mean, he has his book that he's used for every marriage he's ever done, and he didn't use his book. He basically, and we had
because you wrote the vows.
I did.
You're his grandson. You're a writer.
It caused a little family friction, but that was great. And one thing I want to remember, my World War II veteran grandfather on my dad's side, Benjamin Oliver Hagen, who was the last owner of Hagen Steel between Glendale and Burbank, which provided the rebar for a lot of Los Angeles when it was first built. Benjamin Hagen was one of the kindest men I've ever known. And almost every Sunday, if I was up for it, he would take me to the Los Angeles Zoo. He would spend an hour in the reptile house because I knew the name of every curator within the reptile house. He would also sometimes wait an extra 45 minutes for me to be taken into the back area to go through the back of the reptile house because I loved to see the cobras being fed. So we would, Sundays, sometimes they would feed the cobras at 4 p.m. and I'd make sure I was in the proximity. And then there was something really special. If I was lucky and I did everything I was supposed to do that week, I would get 75 cents from my parents, and I would spend the 75 cents to get one of those wax sculptures. Like, I don't know, in the LA Zoo, they had this machine where these 2 metal parts would come together and they would pour liquid molten wax in it. And then it would come apart and there would be like this cool wax statue of like a lion, and it would say LA Zoo on the bottom of the statue, and then it would come out and it would be hot and it would have this special waxy smell. And I would get one of those on the way out because what I found, if I got on the way in, I didn't have any place to put my little statue. But what my grandfather would buy me every time we went out was an ice cream sandwich. So I can't.
That's where you got your love of ice cream sandwiches.
Yeah, now I'm a type 1 diabetic, so I don't get one very often. But I will eat. I should probably eat one ice cream sandwich every year, maybe on Father's Day or on his birthday, when I'm like 60 blood. But I really have a hard time eating an ice cream sandwich without being quite emotional. So that's all well and good. Cool. Well, we talked a little bit about this beautiful Smashberry wine. We talked a little bit about the military and how they've influenced wine. And obviously, if you go back to Julius Caesar and his march over the Alps, that was the first time where wine grapes were allowed over the Alps, and that actually had a huge influence. Obviously, geopolitics, where countries are, where the lines are, where obviously climate change and wine growing between the 30th and 50th parallels of latitude throughout the world. That's changing. So I mean, we're seeing a lot of change, not only to wine, not only due to basically, COVID, but also, as I love to say, that COVID only seems so important because we've been so safe for so long, for 100 years at least. We're living in the safest time in the history of mankind. And although this is a little blip on the screen, that's nothing to scoff at, I would just like to point out that science got us into the greatest point in the history of mankind in a sort of a post-Enlightenment world after the 16th century. And now that we're well into the 21st century, I would just like to point out that science will get us back to flourishing. So be careful, take care of yourselves, obviously. But let's look and see if anyone has any questions about white wine. By the way, my wife has been an equestrian and a dog trainer for her whole life. If you have questions about dog behavior or what's going on with your hunter jumper,
I'm sure that'll be a common question.
How to keep your dog from barking at your mother-in-law. What's in the white wine blend? So it's predominantly Marsanne with Roussanne, Viognier, Grenache Blanc, white Riesling, and I want to say that tiniest like 2% of Chardonnay. I think the Chardonnay was actually Moutet. If you don't know what Moutet is, and thank you, Shelford, from Green from Chicago. Hopefully people are being good at the beach. Love me some Chicago, man. Good. I wish Hot Doug's was still open. I'd tell you to go get a brat and some, it's not Friday, but I'd say go get a brat and some duck fat fries and go enjoy them while taking a beautiful walk around that wonderful city.
From Orcutt, down the street from us.
Mark!
Cool.
Yes. We're basically on the corner of Del Lago and Bradley. We don't hide very much. It's a beautiful thing. Stoltman Rosé, it's hot here.
Yeah.
Oh, hot for 79 degrees in Orcutt. Oh,
78 degrees.
78. It'll be like 56 in like 2 hours. But yes, that is Orcutt hot.
It is Orcutt hot.
That is Orcutt hot. Orcutt hot in the summer is like Texas lows at night in the summer. I looked it up. Actually, our average high is actually lower than Texas's average low in August, 74 degrees.
Makes sense. It's lovely here.
David, you would remember David is one of the guys who's at every Winemaker Magazine conference. I think you went to at least one conference with me. And you would...
I can see it. Oh, crap.
Wow, I can't believe I didn't spill that.
Yeah.
No, you would recognize
I can't see
him and his wife are just absolutely precious. So thank you so much.
Better at faces.
Indeed. Yeah, tannins allow reds to age. What allows white to age? Acidity and pH. I mean, pH is hydrogen ion activity, which is vaguely analogous to acid levels, because as acid levels go up, so do hydrogen ion activity generally. So I would say, I will say structure. Structure is what helps a wine age. So reds are structured by both acid and tannin. Whites are generally structured by acid. Sometimes if they've been heavily oaked, the oak can put a little bit of oak tannin, a little oxidation in there too. Yeah, for sure.
Oak barrel fermented aged wines. Yep, that's what I like.
So you're going to preload. If you're making wine in an oak barrel, there's going to be a far more oxidation and a golden color in that wine. So there's a couple of arguments here. One is that giving the wine a little oxygen early in barrel fermentation protects the wine, and that somehow the oak tannins modify the wine. So even though it's had a little more dissolved oxygen, the wine, because of its tannin, can age more gracefully. It's a little more seamless. It's a little more integrated. I find barrel aging actually does the work of aging to begin with. So I would say for me, unless the wine has great provenance and great reputation for going long term, barrel aged wines would age probably less than low dissolved oxygen stainless steel, glass, or concrete. But let me think about that. But yeah, you got to be a little bit careful about that for sure. And Zinman's getting his Vermentino on. Wow. Yeah, white wine, I'm noticing now that everything's heating up, everyone's drinking white. This is awesome. Good timing. Yes, I mean, to a certain extent, you could probably trace, as Michelle points out, our love for European cuisine and European wine and food pairing can probably go back to a lot of the sort of cultural things that our grandfathers and fathers brought back from Europe and European tours during World War II. All right. And Elaine, welcome, my friend. No, Christy, yeah, good question. I had mentioned that and I didn't come full circle. The question is, do we still make white smashberry? Yes. Well, no, but we are blending one right now, and we're going to also do a smashberry Chardonnay. So the smashberry Chardonnay may be very close to stainless steel because, again, smashberry, the whole idea of smashberry is bright, fruity, without a lot of oak influence, very high-toned fruit in the nose. So yes, not only will there be, yes, there'll be a smashberry rosé again. Yes, there will be a smashberry rosé in can. Yes, there will be a smashberry white. And yes, there will be a smashberry Chardonnay. The smashberry Chardonnay may be actually setting up for, we might be making it for a couple of other little things, maybe like a flash site wine that we're making, but it'll definitely go out through the Miller Family Wine Club. And yeah, that's about it. Let's see. I got those done, and I just want to make sure Steve Anderson and Phil and Denise and Jim and Mike and Anath. Very nice to see you, my friends. Best white wine I've ever had was a 1976 Rheinhessen Trockenbeer and Ausweisse. Drinking.
That's a mouthful.
Drank in 2006. Problem with German is you can just keep adding adjectives to a noun and it just gets bigger and bigger. 1976. Yeah. There's something about old Rieslings. You know, that's why I asked Matt Kettman from The Wine Enthusiast, if you had to nuke and take every vine permanently off the world, would you choose Riesling to be destroyed or would you choose Pinot Noir to be destroyed? That is the toughest question for any wine geek. Let me just give you the answer. If you're a master sommelier, you destroy Pinot Noir. And if you're not a master sommelier, you destroy Riesling. Just seems like that would be because master somms just can't shut the hell up about Riesling, you know, and I appreciate it. Riesling is a fantastic variety. Jim, one of my favorite mistakes, $7 bottle of white and red Bordeaux from Trader Joe's. Forgot about them. I know where this is going. Yeah, and then like, you know, a couple years later, boom, they're better than what you normally do. And Lindsay, hi Lindsay. Miss Lindsay Cummins, you should totally still be playing disc golf, honey. You could have been you so could have been winning tournaments. I just don't know if you are, but I would love to play disc golf with you again. So there you go, Lindsay. Tom Riley's in the house, and Jane from hanging out in Santa Monica. I'm sure it's nice and warm down there as well. I hope people are keeping. I saw some pictures of Venice Beach that gave me a little reason to be worried, but I know that hopefully all of you are being safe. 17 Barrel Burner, the one Chardonnay we had chilled for day drinking. Nice, get it on. I hope that 17 Barrel Burner is treating you well. Jason Quartz in the house and Richard Gattell. Glad you're here, my friend. Oh, I hit the wrong button, but Becky's here too, and we've got 78 in Koreatown, LA. Perfect temperature for making some kimchi. I need some kimchi. I was having some miso soup today, and I thought, wow, you know what would be really good in this is some kimchi. I know it's cross-cultural, but that's okay. Some point, Jim, I need to talk to you about restaurants in Koreatown because I'm going to be down there again soon. And Chef's in the house. Chef Valenti, welcome. And Steve Rude, oh, Dellinger, Chardonnay. Yes, it does age. Some of the best Chardonnay in California, especially all their true Sonoma Coast stuff. Cool, and TJ's in the house, and Vincent. Yes, the mayor of Chino Hills is here. The Honorable Peter Rogers, and I hope Mary's there too, and Teresa Gilmore. And Janice, Eric, Oz, the chef. You remember what he did to us in Claremont? Oh my God, that was one of the best meals of my life. Thank you, chef. Carlton Scott Waters. Let's tell some Vegas stories. Right on, brother. Your secrets are safe with me. Didn't leave Vegas except maybe to the missus, and definitely. She will never tell, dude. She will never tell unless you get here, and then she will talk some smack. Hope everything's well in Montana, and reminds me of that beautiful Frank Zappa lyric. I'm going to Montana soon. I'm going to be a dental floss tycoon. No idea what it means, but I really, I don't know what a lot of his music means. Steve Hall's in the house, and I hope, Mr. Vandergrift, you're freaky deaky Dutch, but we love you anyways. And Ann and James Jameson, lovely to have you here as well as Richard Mann. And Bruce, dude, good questions, good times.
Dead Linus.
Oh, Dead Linus is here, yay! So nice to have you here, and you even remembered. I believe her name is Karen.
Okay.
No, it starts with a K.
You can tell us.
I don't want to impugn her. I don't want to impugn her. Karen's a weird name in the modern world, but we love our Dead Linus. She is so amazingly supportive. And if I hold my Pliny the Elder shirt just right, it's right on there. It is Karen. Yay!
Oh, whoop, whoop. Nice. Good one.
I love it. I remembered it. I Facebook stalked her to try to figure out what her name means. It's still my project.
I swear I saw it on your Google search. I was like, find out.
Yeah. Here we go. So now I know that she looked at my Google search. One reason why her hair is red.
I was sitting in the chair right across from you while you were.
Oh yeah, there's not a lot of secrets here. We always have a lot of fun. All right, well we're gonna close up. I hope you guys all had a fun time on day drinking today. Let's go ahead and down the hatch. We're all in this together. Remember to find a friend, someone in your social circle, and someone in your neighborhood that might need a little extra support or love. Bring them some cookies. Leave them. Make sure they're clean. Just make sure people around you know that we're all human. we're all in this together, and we've had some really, really tough times as humans that we've got out the other side, continue to flourish. What it really means to me is listening to science, listening to medicine, and taking some time recognizing that all of this stuff that we've done over the last few months, this is equity. Are you going to go out and let that equity burn a hole in your pants, and you're going to go out into the middle of the world and you're going to do stupid stuff? Or are we going to take a little bit of more time to be conscious, cautious, and to protect the most vulnerable of our neighbors, our elderly neighbors, our immunosuppressed and compromised neighbors?
Our type 1 diabetics.
Me, save me, please save me. So part of this is self-serving, but I also want to say that a lot of it is just the fact that I like to consider myself someone who trusts science and medicine and and caution. I've never known anyone exhibiting caution doing something incredibly stupid, but I'm sure you could think of me doing something. All right, guys, have a fantastic evening. Eat some barbecue. Try some cheesy corn. It's some stuff that they do at Jack Stack's in near Kansas City, Missouri. It's just like mac and cheese, but you use canned corn instead. And I used to think they barbecued the corn and slow smoked it and cut it off. They're like, nope, it's canned. Canned corn, some nice sharp cheddar, more pieces of American cheese than you know what to do with, and sticks of butter. Put it in some corn, little heavy whipping cream, whip that up, and you will make cheesy corn, and people will freak the F out.
It's really good.
Unbelievable. So don't forget your burnt ends and your cheesy corn, and do what you're going to do. Have a fabulous Memorial Day. Thank you to everyone out there. First responders, I'm going to go ahead and say anyone who's taking care of anyone in the world today, but most importantly today, our military folks, and especially those that gave part of themselves and or their lives to keeping us all free so we can do just what we're doing now. So from Chanda, from myself, from everyone at the Miller Family Wine Company, MillerFamilyWines.com, DD50, 50% off. That's as commercial as I'll get. Give me a kiss. Have a great night. Love each other. And if you can't be with the one you love the one you're with. Cheers, everybody. Wink. It does work, by the way.